Let's continue with this article. The longer the constraints on societies imposed by the crisis, the more profound were the likely post-crisis attitude changes likely to be. In other words, if the crisis lingered in various forms through 2020, it is likely that the year would be seen by society and historians as a breakpoint equivalent to the world wars of the 20th century. Now, in a previous message, I mentioned how the governments, and meaning federal and state, drastic impositions on the U.S. citizens in response to COVID-19 has produced the social environment that makes it easier for governments to orchestrate its global war. How so? Well, first, President Trump's newly proposed guidelines. I received something in the mail last week. I'm sure you did too. President Trump's coronavirus guidelines for America. Well, yesterday he updated his guidelines. And there are guidelines opening up America again, the proposed guidelines. Now, social distance is recommended because he said from the outset, even when we open back up, social distancing will still be required. Well, is the virus still out there or not? And if it's out there, why are we coming back out? But yet we can come back out, just practice social distancing. Well, in phase 1 of his guidelines, it states, all individuals when in public, that is parks, outdoor recreation areas, shopping areas, should maximize physical distance from others. Social settings of more than 10 people where appropriate distancing may not be practical should be avoided unless precautionary measures are observed. Avoid socializing in groups of more than 10 people in circumstances that do not readily allow for appropriate physical distancing. Receptions, trade shows, I guess football games, basketball games, so to end with sport and play all together. Now, this is when it opens back up. So we'll be operating a little bit more like we are right now when it opens back up. So guidelines denote voluntary compliance. It's a guideline, I can comply or not. Well, the big question is President Trump's guidelines legally enforceable through local, state, and national policing? Now, if they are enforceable, then they should be called something else instead of guidelines. Now, it's safe to say that we have witnessed that social distancing has been supported and enforced by government policing. Police right now can break up crowds more than 10. They've closed parks. So if they close parks and they close playgrounds, then obviously if you're more than 10, they can break you up as well. So this is a concern for citizens desiring to assemble in protest of the government's actions that they disagree with, such as a military campaign or war against other nations. Now, President Donald Trump from the outset, the day that he was inaugurated, the next day, well, actually during his inauguration, has met with civil backlash, partly because of his arrogant decisions. In other words, people protested by the millions all over the world. This man wanted a military parade in his inauguration, like he's some stallion, whatever you call it, or some Hitler. I'm gonna say the word. He wanted a military parade. Shows you what his thinking's about. Well, since the U.S. citizens are not household pets for the elitist more warmongers, then how social distancing is handled by government policing must be carefully considered when citizens move to protest this upcoming war of desolation. Now, guns and ammunition sold off the shelves at the beginning of COVID-19, or the COVID-19 crisis, because some people are skeptical of the motives of government. Of course, some people got arms to protect their person and property, but others are skeptical of what is clearly becoming something bizarre. But we must also consider that with millions of men and women whose jobs have been snatched from them and whose businesses have been closed down by their governments, what are they going to do? So joining the armed services is an attractive option. With no job, maybe that's a way for young men and women to go who once had jobs. So no draft is needed because there's no job, so they'll come anyway.